Welcome to the Sermon in the Valley with Pastor Rob Eller. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. If you like what you hear in this podcast, please subscribe to it and share it with your friends and family. Thank you. Welcome back to the Sermon in the Valley. Pastor Rob Eller here with your weekly sermon episode, with the readings in my sermon from Sunday, July 26th, the 9th Sunday after Pentecost. Let's get started. The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 13th chapter. Jesus put before the crowds another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed into his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure in a field, which a man found and reburied. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught fish of every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down, and put the good into baskets but threw out the bad. So it'll be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the furnace of fire, where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all this? They answered yes. And he said to them, Therefore, every scribe who has become a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household, who brings out his treasure, what is new and what is old. The Gospel of the Lord. I want you to think about your most prized and valuable possession. It doesn't necessarily have to be worth a lot in terms of money. It could be something very sentimental to you. A gift you were given, a priceless heirloom, or something that holds a lot of meaning to you. Now, I want you to think of the smallest thing you have in your house. It's probably something like a screw or a bolt, or maybe it's something in your kitchen, like a grain of salt. Whatever it is, it's probably not of much significance or value, and if it suddenly disappeared, it wouldn't make much of a difference. I imagine that those two things are probably not the same. That's not a coincidence. It's just how we see the world. We sort things into what matters and what doesn't. We do it quickly, almost without thinking. When we see an item as valuable, we may treat it differently. It's kept in a safe, or a display case, or a special drawer you don't let the kids touch. If it's insignificant, it just gets left out on the counter, or swept into a junk drawer, or lost behind the stove for a year without anyone noticing it's gone. So when Jesus wants to tell you what the kingdom of heaven is like, you would think he would go with something impressive. He does do that later, but first he compares it to something small, easy to miss, and easy to forget that it's even there. Sounds strange, right? It's contradictory. Most of us assume that if something is small enough to overlook, it can't possibly also be the most valuable thing we own. And if it's valuable enough to reorder our lives around, it should probably look like it. Jesus isn't choosing one or the other. He's choosing both, the negligible and the priceless, to describe the exact same thing. It doesn't quite add up, but then again, it isn't supposed to, at least not yet. Today we wrap up a mini-series of Jesus' parables with some short ones that on the surface don't seem to go together until you dive a little deeper. We're going to focus on the first four: the mustard seed, the yeast, the treasure in the field, and the pearl of great value. Split them into pairs and something interesting happens. The mustard seed and yeast are both things so small you couldn't help to not even notice. The treasure and the pearl are the opposite. Both are about something so valuable a person would trade everything they own just to have it. Small, and then priceless. Easy to miss, and then impossible to walk away from. Two pairs, two very different feelings. And yet, Jesus is using them to describe one thing. The kingdom of heaven is like. The first of the parables is one that we're familiar with, the mustard seed. Elsewhere in the Gospels, Jesus has used the image of a mustard seed to describe how powerful faith is. Later in Matthew, he says that if you have even a little bit of faith, the size of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. Here he is using that image to describe what the kingdom is like. Now, mustard seeds are incredibly small. Not the smallest as the parable tells us, but still small, only 1 or 2 millimeters across. And yet from that seed comes a large shrub, 6 to 20 feet tall and just as wide. Now for reference, I'm 6'2". So that tree would be 1 to 3 of me tall. From a seed no bigger than the head of a pin. Mustard shrubs were not some grand tree like the cedars of Lebanon, which the prophets used as an image of power and might. Instead, they were a basic bush, where birds would gather and make their nests. In fact, they were considered trash trees, because they didn't produce fruit, and the wood wasn't good for other uses. The second of the parables in this pairing is that of the yeast or the leaven. If any of you have ever baked bread or brewed beer, you know the amount of hidden power that little bit of yeast can have. One of my first homebrewing batches, the rubber stopper in my fermenter blew right off because of the pressure created by that small amount of yeast. When you bake bread, that small amount of yeast can make the dough go from a small ball to enough bread to feed the masses. What's interesting about the use of yeast in this parable is the negative connotations it had in Jesus' time. Yeast was viewed as corruption or contamination, which is why it gets purged before Passover, and Jesus warned the disciples about the leaven of the Pharisees. Here's what these two parables say about the kingdom, though. It's imperceptibly small and easily overlooked. And because we can't see it, we don't see the transformative power within it. From it, though, comes something so remarkable, we may not believe our eyes. The next two parables are what we would expect the kingdom of heaven to be compared to: a hidden treasure and a pearl. While these two parables have their similarities, there are still noticeable differences between them. In the parable of the hidden treasure, the person who finds the treasure isn't actively seeking it out. He just happens to stumble upon it while he's out working. The merchant, on the other hand, is always looking for the next greatest thing. The parable even says that the merchant was in search of fine pearls when he came across one that he thought was of great value. In both parables, the person thought what they had just found was so valuable to them that they needed to give up everything else they owned just so they could have it. When was the last time any of us did that? Probably never, which isn't a failure on our part, but a clue as to what these two men experienced. If we've never sold everything we had for anything, it's probably because we've never found something like this. But here's the paradox of the kingdom of heaven. Even though it's worth a great amount, it's not made up of anything valuable. The kingdom of heaven is made up of what is ordinary. Think about what Jesus didn't say for a moment. He didn't say the kingdom is like the pearl itself, polished, rare, kept under lock and key. He said the kingdom is like a tiny seed and a pinch of yeast, and that it's worth the pearl. The substance and value are two different things. Something can be made of nothing but seed or yeast and still be worth more than everything you own. It's not a contradiction that Jesus wants us to resolve. It's the whole point. So here we are with 4 short stories that Jesus insists are really just one. A seed nobody would bother picking up off the ground. A pinch of something that used to mean rot and corruption, now hidden in flour on purpose. A treasure someone stumbled across on a random day. A pearl one man spent his whole life looking for. 2 of them found by accident. 2 of them almost invisible. All 4 of them somehow the same thing. But notice one thing in all the parables. Jesus never said the kingdom of heaven will be like. Instead, he said the kingdom of heaven is like. Present tense, happening right now, in front of us. Because as we know, Jesus brought the kingdom of heaven down to earth. That small choice of words changes everything about how we're supposed to listen to these parables. If Jesus said, will be, we could relax a little. We could file this away for another day, something to hope for, prepare for, wait patiently on. The way we wait for a package that hasn't shipped yet. Someday there will be a seed. Someday the dough will expand. Someday someone will find the treasure or the pearl. But that's not what he said. He said, already is. The kingdom is already, the seed is already in the ground. The yeast is already working through the dough. Somewhere right now there is a field with treasure buried in it and a merchant still looking for a pearl. None of them knows yet how the story ends for them. Which means the kingdom isn't a future reward for getting through the present. It isn't waiting on the other side of death or the other side of history, or even the other side of whatever this past week has been for us. It's already here, already small, already easy to miss, in the same way it always has been. Something as unremarkable as yeast, as easy to overlook as a seed on the ground. So if the kingdom isn't something we're waiting on, but something already here, already growing, already hidden in the ordinary stuff, what does that actually ask of us? Honestly, not much at first. And that might be the hardest part of this. These parables don't end with instructions. Nobody in them is told to go dig deeper, search longer, or try to make the seed grow faster. The person in the field wasn't rewarded for his effort. He wasn't even looking. The merchant wasn't praised for his business sense. He just recognized something when he finally saw it. If anything, our call isn't to build the kingdom or make it bigger through our own strength. It's simply to notice it. To stop assuming that because something is basic and often overlooked, that it can't also be the thing worth everything we have. The ordinary truly can be extraordinary. So maybe this week, that means paying closer attention to the parts of our lives we've already written off as ordinary. The people we see so often, we've stopped really looking at them. The routines that feel too small to matter. The quiet, unremarkable moments that never make it into the story you tell about your own life. Somewhere in there, according to Jesus, is the thing we would sell everything for. If only we would recognize it. And when we do recognize it, notice what happens next. Not obligation or a sense that we better respond correctly or we'll have missed our chance. No, it's joy. A joy so complete, it makes selling everything else feel less like a sacrifice and more like finally putting down something heavy we didn't realize we've been carrying. That's the response every time in these parables. And that should be our response when we recognize the kingdom in the ordinary. The kingdom of heaven is already here. It isn't waiting for us to earn it, build it, or go find it in some far-off place. It's already planted. It's already working through the dough. The only thing left is to open our eyes and see what's already in front of us. And all of God's people said, Amen. Thank you for listening to this sermon. As always, if you like what you hear, please subscribe to this podcast. Please share this episode, share this podcast with your friends, your family, your neighbors, and yes, even your enemies. Spread the good news for everyone to hear. The Sermon in the Valley is a production of Gutenberg Media and is written and produced at the Patrick Stevens Broadcast Studio here in the heart of the Tuscarawas Valley. God's mercy, grace, peace, and love be with each and every single one of you. And as always, have a blessed day.